and he is not allowed to argue with anyone regarding these narrations, nor to debate with anyone. وَلَا يَتَعَلَّمَ الْجِدَالِ, and he must not learn the sciences of argumentation. He must not learn the art of argumentation. فَإِنَّ الْكَلَامَ فِي الْقَدَرِ وَالرُّؤْيَةِ وَالْقُرْآنِ وَغَيْرِهَا مِنَ السُّنَنِ مَكْرُوهٌ وَمَنْهِيٌّ عَنْهُ. And speech or entering into theological rhetoric and speech without recourse to the revelation in the affair of qadr and ar-ru'ya, which is to see Allah with one's eyes on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and likewise to speak about the Quran and other than these affairs and other matters that are established in the Sunnah, is hated and it is prohibited. لا يكون صاحبه وإن صاب بكلامه السنة من أهل السنة حتى يدع الجدال ويسلم ويؤمن بالآثار. And the one who engages in these affairs, meaning of kalam and jidal, theological rhetoric, argumentation, applying things to one's own reason and aql, then the one who engages in these affairs, even if he reaches the truth and the sunnah through kalam, through these affairs such as kalam, aql and theological rhetoric, even if he reaches the truth and the sunnah, he is not from Ahlul Sunnah until he abandons argumentation and instead submits and believes in the narrations, in the athar. Na'am. So upon that, Shaykh Ahmed al-Najmi, he mentioned, as for the statement of Imam Ahmed, that it is upon him merely to have iman in these narrations and not to reject a single word from them, meaning from the hadith, from those ahadith that have been reported, that have been mentioned, that are connected to the affairs of the pre-decree and other than the pre-decree, from the foundations of the religion and its branches, that we are not to reject anything from them. As for that which followed, then he mentioned that it has been prohibited, it is forbidden to argue and to debate regarding the pre-decree, the qadr, and that which Allah has decreed. And that is because al-qadr, it is a secret from the secrets that Allah has kept for himself. And no one knows the decree except for Allah. So it is not permissible to find fault or to oppose or to criticize or to argue over these affairs. And that is because argumentation concerning them will not lead to any fruitful result. Rather, perhaps, that the end result is that the servant will fall into doubt. So it is wajib upon you to know, O servant of Allah, that you are to abandon al-munadhara, you are to abandon debating and setting up debating forums over the affairs of qadr, and that you do not argue concerning it, and that is for your own benefit. For indeed, if you were to argue and enter into these types of discussions regarding the usul of the deen, regarding the aqeedah, the names and attributes of Allah, the foundations of the creed, such as the affair of qadr and seeing Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah and other such affairs, punishment in the grave, the bridge over the hellfire, and other than that from the affairs of the unseen, that if you were to listen to those shubahat, to those doubts concerning these matters that are thrown by an innovator at you, that these are affairs that an innovator throws at you, mean these doubts, perhaps some of that will enter your heart and establish itself there, so that you become doubtful after you were once certain. Doubtful after you once believed. So by Allah, and beware, by Allah, and be afraid for yourself, and try your best to keep away from these types of affairs, because this and its likes, they are a slippery slope to your destruction and the destruction of the one who falls into them. And just to interject here, that we have seen over the years, my brothers and sisters, how many people who have fallen into disputation and debate with Ahlul Biddah, that they have started reading the books and the writings and the teachings, or watching that which they shouldn't watch from the people of desires, or that they read an article from them, and then thereafter they fall into doubt, and they think that the affair is in their hands, and they think that they have the strength to repel the doubts, and they think that they have been given that which their salaf were not given, by way of skill and discernment, that even their salaf, meaning the early generations of the great scholars, weren't given. These people think they have it. So they will listen to Ahlul Bid'ah, and they will debate with Ahlul Bid'ah, and they will read their writings and look at their tweets, or look at their YouTube videos, or spread between themselves the speech of such and such an innovator and such an innovator. And they think that they are better than the Salaf. They think they are more endowed with strength and Iman and knowledge and deep-rooted ability to repel the doubts, that even the likes of Muhammad ibn Sirin couldn't, that Hassan al-Basri couldn't, that Ahmad bin Hanbal couldn't. And they believe today that these shabab, 18, 19-year-old, 20, 21-year-old, he thinks that he can repel what the Salaf refused to enter into. And this is what Shaykh Ahmed al-Najmi is talking about here, when he said, "It is upon you, O servant of Allah, that you abandon disputation and argumentation and debating, and that is for your benefit. It is from your benefit that you don't enter into this. Because if you were to hear a doubt that an innovator throws at you, that perhaps some of that will enter your heart and establish itself there, but you don't even know, because you think that you have the ability and the innate strength in you to repel these doubts. Even in an affair as firmly established in the deen as qadr, the Salaf would not argue over qadr. The Salaf would not argue over an affair that is agreed upon, established in the book of Allah and the Sunnah and the Ijma'. Yet they would not argue about it, even though there are hundreds of texts, that support the position of Ahlul Sunnah in the affair of Qadr and in the affair of the Kalam of Allah, the speech of Allah, and that it is not created, and in the affair of Ar-Ru'ya, that the believers will see their Lord Yawm al-Qiyamah with the eyes in their heads, established without any shadow of a doubt. Yet the Salaf would not argue. They would not open themselves up to argumentation with the Qadariyah or the Jahmiyah or the Mu'tazila or other than them, because they knew that the hearts are weak and they don't want to set a precedent for the people that this is how you debate. And that's why Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, or Imam Ahmad likewise, and also Shaykh Ahmad al-Najmi, what did he say? وَلَا يَتَعَلَّمَ الْجِدَالِ. He does not learn how to debate. We don't learn debating. We don't study it. We don't stand in front of the mirror and pretend that we're arguing to fine-tune our argumentation and our skills of debating. That is the way of Ahlul Biddah. What is sufficient for us is to submit, as Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned, that upon you is to just to submit, to have taslim to that which has been narrated in the book and the sunnah. As for learning argumentation, he said no. وَأَلَّا يُخَاسِمَ أَحَدًا وَلَا يُنَاذِرَهُ وَلَا يَتَعَلَّمَ الْجِدَالِ. And he is not to argue with anyone, nor to debate with anyone, and nor should he learn how to argue. What you have in the example of the Salaf is sufficient for you. Upon you is to convey. Upon you is to convey what is in the book and the Sunnah. Upon you is to convey the speech of Imam Ahmad. Upon you is to convey the speech of Imam al-Bukhari, and to convey the speech of Fudail bin Iyad, and Sufyan al-Thawri, and Hammad ibn Salama, and Imam al-Shafi'i, and Imam al-Awza'i, and Abu Hurairah before them, Ibn Umar, Salama, Aisha, radiyallahu anhuma, wa radiyallahu anhum ajma'een. And to convey that which the Prophet upon you is just to convey. Convey it in an article that has been written by one of the scholars of Sunnah, from the scholars of Hadith, or their students, from the students of knowledge in the West, or the students of knowledge in the East, or in the Arab lands. To convey that. That is your job. As for argumentation and listening to doubts, and someone sends you a YouTube video and says to you, listen to this, this is a response to you Salafis, delete it. Delete it. Sufficient for you is what has been written by the scholars and their students. Sufficient for you is the kalam of the likes of Al-Albani, Ibn Baz, Ibn Thaymeen, Muqbil bin Hadi, Rabi al-Madkhali, Salih al-Fawzan, Ahmad al-Najmi, Zayd al-Madkhali, Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad. Sufficient for you is the kalam of these ulama and those like them. You don't need to go any further. And the speech of their students, from those who are well known for ilm and istiqamah, whether they are in this land or whether they are in the Arab lands or elsewhere. Sufficient for you for the English speaker are the translations of the likes of our brother Abu Iyad, or Abu Hakim, or Abu Hassan, or Hassan al-Somali, and other than them. Sufficient for you is what they have translated. That you need to go now and listen to Ahlul Bid'ah and the doubts of the Mubtadi'ah. Be careful, my brothers and my sisters. Sufficient for you is that which Allah has guided you to of the haqq. Don't listen to the doubts of Ahlul Biddah, because by listening to them, you have opposed the manhaj of the Salaf of this ummah. And I'm fed up of hearing too many times, I know I shouldn't be listening to it, but you oppose the manhaj of Ahlul Sunnah, and you know, and then you say but I had to listen to him, but I thought I'd listen to it and send it to you. Why do you want me to listen to it? Why do you listen to it? As for those who have the ability to refute, then the scholars know who they are, and they are appointed by Ahlul Ilm. So they are individuals who are able to read and rebut the doubts of Ahlul Bid'ah, just as Shaykhul Islam used to do, Ibn Taymiyyah, and Al-Imam Al-Mujaddid Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, as Al-Albani used to do, as Muqbil used to do, as Rabi bin Hadi does, and as the scholars they have done, because they have an ability, and their purpose for reading it is to read it and refute it and to convey that refutation. It is not upon you as a general person to start listening to the doubts and to start spreading the doubts of Ahlul Bid'ah. Do not be secure in yourselves that you are protected, that you believe that your iman is so strong, just like the one when the Dajjal appears. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, if one of you hears that the Dajjal has appeared, then do not approach him. For indeed a man will go to him, believing himself to be strong in iman, and he will not return as his follower. Wallahu musta'an. So sometimes the brothers and sisters, they think they're like that. So then they get into the habit, because we are living in this YouTube, Facebook culture. We are living in a culture that spreads around through WhatsApp messages or Telegram or else or other forms of social media, where spreading of doubts has become normal. Spreading of doubts has become normal. And this is a calamity upon the da'wah. That is something that was forbidden by the Salaf becomes normalized, becomes adi, that no one cares about it anymore. Oh, look at him. Look what he just said. Look what he just said. You are adding to the views of Ahlul Bid'ah when you click on that YouTube video. You are adding to the numbers that are added. So when a person spreads his bid'ah, why should any Salafi listen to what he's got to say? Why should any Salafi stand up and say, I will debate him? This is not the way of Ahlul Sunnah. This is not the way of Ahmed. This is not the way of Al-Hasan al-Basri, or no Muhammad bin Sirin, no Al-Awza'i, no Sufyan al-Thawri. This is not the way of Ahmad bin Hanbal. Rather, from the usul of this deen, as Imam Ahmad said, usul sunnati indana, wa alla yukhasima ahada, that he is not to argue with anyone, wala yunadhirahu, and he is not to debate. He is not to debate with him. And he does not learn how to argue. Now there are courses that Ahlul Biddah they run courses online. We will teach you how to debate. Wal-iyadhu billah. The Salaf used to flee from debating. These people are encouraged and taught the skill of argumentation. Over what? Is it in accordance to the statement of Allah, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and argue with them in a manner that is best? Is it in accordance to that? No, it is not. It is not in accordance to arguing with them in the best possible way, as we have discussed many times, and what the conditions are and what that entails, because the argumentation in a goodly manner with the one who seeks the truth, from the one who is not repelled by the truth, with the one who is not arguing back, with the argumentations that are rooted in the ideas of the Mu'tazila or the Quburiyya or the Sufiyya or Ahlul Ra'i, not rooted in those kind of arguments of logic and reason and aql, but rather sometimes a person that he comes back to you and he says, but I didn't really understand that. Can you explain that to me? Because I always thought X, Y, Z, and you've just said something different. So how do I understand this? And how can you explain that to me? That type of jidal, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and argue with them in a manner that is best, is permitted, because that is in the shade of the kitab and the sunnah and the way of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. As for shouting and screaming and causing, wreaking havoc and mayhem on social media, where one responds to the other and then this one reacts to that one just so they can get as many clicks as possible on YouTube. Is this the intent? There's no ikhlas in that. They just want their numbers to increase so they can get more funds and more money and more return on the number of clicks that they get, because then they get revenue in return for that. Ahlul Sunnah, barakallahu feekum, are free from all of this type of deception and trickery and buffoonery and fooling around with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are talking to your father and your father is now responding to you and he asks you, and there is between you a friendly debate because he is your father, so you will honor him, or between you and your son, or the son between the son with his mother, and so on, وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, then argue with them in a manner that is best, rooted in the kitab and the sunnah, not for numbers, not for a crowd, not for an audience, not so that you can get so many people clicking on your YouTube. That's not the purpose. As for refutations, then the refutations are established in the kitab and the sunnah and the way of the salaf. And that's why our brothers refute Ahlul Biddah. And that's why, as when they take on that role and that duty to forbid the evil, they do so based upon knowledge, based upon the kalam of Ahlul Ilm, based upon that which they read from the likes of Shaykhul Islam, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, Imam Ahmed before them, Barbahari, Bukhari, and other than them from the A'immatul Islam, from the great Imams of Islam. It is upon you, my brothers and sisters, to take heed of this warning. Over 25 years or more, the amount of people that we've seen get thrown by shubuhat, get thrown by doubts, for the very reason that I'm mentioning right now. And now we are living in a time when those doubts are presented in a manner that is even more deceptive, even more subtle, and even more readily available. Because it is in your hands, on your phones, on your screens before your eyes. So what do? Delete it. Someone asks you, did you listen to it? No, I didn't. And give them this quote of Imam Ahmed. Give them this quote of Imam Ahmed. That we don't sit with Ahlul Bid'ah. We don't argue with Ahlul Bid'ah. وَتَرْكُ الْمِرَاءِ وَالْجِدَالِ, and to abandon argumentation and disputation, as we've covered previously in the durus and in the classes that we have covered in Usul Sunnah. Just go back and look at them. وَتَرْكُ الْمِرَاءِ وَالْجِدَالِ وَالْخُصُمَاتِ فِي الدِّينِ, to abandon argumentation, quarreling and disputation in the religion. So why are you arguing for, my brother and my sister? وَتَرْكُ الْجُلُوسِ مَعَ أَصْحَابِ الْأَهْوَاءِ, and to abandon sitting with the people of desires. How many times the Salaf used to say, don't listen to Ahlul Biddah, don't read the books of Ahlul Biddah. If they talk to you, put your fingers in your ears. Or as one of them used to say, if Ahlul Biddah is taking a path, then you take another path. If you see them on the street, cross the road. Not because we're afraid of them, but because we are following the Sunnah. It is not fear that drives us, not fear of them. It is fear of opposing the manhaj of the Salaf of this Ummah. And there occurs, to finish, there occurs in that hadith reported by Imam al-Bukhari that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that he came out to his companions whilst they were arguing over the Quran. So when he saw that, then he became angry. وَغَضِبَ, so he became angry with a severe anger up until he became red in the face. And he said to them, is this what you were commanded with? Is this what you were commanded with? Warning them and informing them of his displeasure. It is not permissible to argue over things that are established in the Book of Allah. It is not permissible to hone your skills of argumentation so that you can prepare yourselves to argue with Ahlul Bid'ah. 25 and more years we have been doing da'wah, and you do not find from us, walillahi alhamd, setting up forums for argumentation and debate, gathering the people together, come and join me, and today I'm going to argue with so and so. Never. And gathering the people on YouTube or in a masjid or elsewhere and saying that today there's going to be a debate between a Salafi and a Khariji. That is not possible. That you're going to do this in front of the people. The manhaj of Ahlul Sunnah is to leave that alone. Barakallahu feekum. When some of the people used to visit Shaykh al-Albani, yes, he used to debate with them. When you reach the level of Shaykh al-Albani and someone comes to you and they bring a tape recorder with you, then alhamdulillah. But you are no al-Albani and you are no Ibn Taymiyyah. You are no Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. You are no Ibn Qayyim. Do not delude yourselves. You are not Muqbil. And you are not Rabi'. And I have seen people walk in on Shaykh Rabi' and try to debate him, and he would shut them down. Read the truth, he would say to them. Read what Ahlul Biddah have written and read my response. That is enough for you. That is enough. Barakallahu feekum. Sufficient for you is Imam Ahmad and Ibn Battah and Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Abdul Wahhab and Al-Albani and Muqbil and Rabi' and Al-Fawzan. Sufficient for you are these great Imams and scholars of the Sunnah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaykum.